Take it away, Melissa.
Okay, thank you. Hold on one second. We'll admit people. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. Sarah and I are here to talk about education in our community. And we'll talk about early childhood education, K-12, and then higher education. And just for introductions, I'm Melissa Shaw. I work for Coconino County as the long range planner. So next slide, Sarah. Just as a reminder, these regional snapshots are informational sessions about different topics that we'll be covering in the regional plan update. So they're going to be held most Mondays, skipping over the holidays though. So the schedule is posted on the regional plan website where you can also register if you haven't already. These are 15-minute presentations along with 15 minutes for question and answers. And as Sarah just mentioned, these will be posted to the City of Flagstaff YouTube channel for future viewing in case you miss a topic that you're interested in. So there we go. So the first topic we'll talk about is early childhood education and the Head Start program in the Flagstaff region. So the Head Start mission is to inspire tomorrow's future today. And in our Flagstaff area, it's administered by NACOG, or Northern Arizona Council of Government. They actually are responsible for running the program in 4 counties in Northern Arizona. Here in our region, they serve 166 children and families. This is a federally funded program specifically geared for children that are age 0 to 5 years who meet certain income guidelines. And the goal of the program is to provide children that have some social disadvantage with an opportunity to begin school on equal footing with more socially advantaged peers. So again, those are the centers, and there are 666 students being served. Yeah, next slide. So we'll talk now about public schools. So public education, kindergarten through 12th grade, and Flagstaff Unified School District, or FUSD, oversees the public education system within Flagstaff. And we have 16 public schools serving kindergarten through 12th grade. Just a quick breakdown of those. We've got 8 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, 3 high schools, a distance learning school for grades 7 to 12, 1 pre-kindergarten and elementary school that emphasizes Navajo language and culture, and then 1 bilingual magnet school. And you can see the mission of Flagstaff School District is to provide all students with a high quality education through diverse pathways to foster success in college, career, citizenship, and life. So the next slide, please. Here's a list of our FUSD public schools, grade level, and then the grades served. What we're not showing on this, but we'll talk about at the end, are their performance or their letter grades for each school. So we'll talk a bit about some additional thoughts that we have regarding understanding performance of each of the schools. The next slide, please. And so we'll talk a bit about enrollment in FUSD. In the 2021, this school year, the total enrollment in the school system was just under 9,000 people or students, 8,937 students. And you can see by the chart that the majority of those are in elementary school. Junior high school has the smallest number of enrollment at 1,894 students, while high school has 3,133 students. Next slide, please. And so from information that was available, we did get an understanding of the ethnicity distribution in FUSD in 2019 and 2020. You can see that during those school years, the enrollment was a bit higher overall. The enrollment during the school year was about 42% were white students, 28% were Hispanic, about 25% were Native American, 4% were described as multiple races, and then less than 1% were African American, Asian, or Pacific Islander. So it's interesting to note that we have seen some trends between 2018 2020. The race and ethnicity has nearly remained unchanged. There are some shifts. We saw that white students population enrollment went slightly down, while Hispanic went up, and Native American stayed approximately the same. So the next slide, please. we'll talk a bit about charter schools now. And so there are 9 charter schools in the Flagstaff region, 3 high schools and 6 elementary. Charter schools are allowed in Arizona under Arizona revised statutes. And their goal is to provide a learning environment that will improve pupil achievement. And it's an alternative and additional type of academic choice that complements our public school system. So you can see, again, the chart on the right listing the charter schools and the grades they serve. Again, there are performance rankings with each school as a letter grade, and that's just something that we want to look into further. So the next slide, please. So we can talk a bit about public school funding, and it's primarily driven by student enrollment. And student-specific, district-specific, and other charter-specific factors affect the funding. Just to keep in mind that school districts can raise funds through local property tax, and they can also send out bond initiatives to increase funding for voter approvals. Charter schools, though, they're different. They do not have the ability to levy local property taxes. So instead, they do get a higher per pupil allocation from the state. And local decisions for spending of school funds is directed by the local school or charter governing board. So the next slide, please. And at this point, then we'll hand that back over to Sarah to talk about higher education.
Thank you, Melissa. So Melissa's given you the early childhood to 8th to 12th grade sense of what we have in Flagstaff. I think we also have 1 or 2 private schools. And so the education at the higher level, above a high school level, is provided by 2 main institutions in Flagstaff, the Coconino Community College and Northern Arizona University. And I'm going to go through a couple of slides to talk about the distinctions between these 2 universities and how they serve different needs overall in the community. You can see here the mission statement of Northern Arizona University is focused on academic programs, research, public service, and creative endeavors that enrich lives and create opportunities in Arizona and beyond. They develop solutions to challenge and drive innovation in supportive, inclusive, and diverse environment. And Coconino Community College is committed to providing accessible and affordable educational programs that prepare students for the future. They're deeply engaged with the communities they serve and promote student success through a welcoming and inclusive learning environment designed for innovative programming, career and workforce development, university transfer education, and continued lifelong learning opportunities. Just from the mission statement alone, you can these 2 institutions complement each other, and they have a very close relationship, not only through the transfer program, but just overall in their approach to providing higher education throughout Coconino County and to serve students throughout Arizona. So in terms of enrollment, Northern Arizona University is the larger institution, and institution-wide, it has 29,560 students last fall. That included campuses in Phoenix, their online enrollment, and the campus in Yuma. And while the Flagstaff Mountain campus, the one we in this community are most familiar with, had 73% of all students enrolled in Flagstaff last year. As far as undergraduates, the undergraduate student body is the largest percentage of the Flagstaff campus students. And there are approximately 1,800 graduate students who serve in assistantships or are getting PhDs or getting masters in various fields that are provided through the university. Northern Arizona has become a Hispanic serving institution in the last 10 years. In 2010, their population of Hispanic and Latinx students was only 14%, and last fall it was 24% of their student population. In addition, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, there were regularly over 1,000 international students, and there's a Center for International Education on campus. I think that enrollment has fallen quite a bit since visas and other things were limited, and it'll be interesting to see how that changes in the next 5 years or so as things are opening back up. Coconino Community College served almost over 3,200 students in Coconino County. Vast majority of their students are from Arizona, and Coconino County being the primary place, so they have a much more local emphasis in their student focus. 65% of students were under 21 who attended CCC, and I think that's important because of the kind of services they're providing, not only in transferring to other universities within the state of Arizona, they also provide dual credit for high school students in the Flagstaff Unified School District and in the charter high schools in the Flagstaff area. Over 20% of those served by Coconino Community College were Hispanic or Latinx ethnicity, and they have a higher percentage of Native American students being served, especially at the Page campus, which is the only campus they have outside the Flagstaff area. As we said before, Northern Arizona University focuses on bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. So there are some certificates, minors, and other things provided. They have 8 colleges spanning from arts and letters, which not only provides services to students, but provides the Flagstaff home for the Flagstaff Symphony, theater and arts, entertainment and activities for the entire community, including ballet schools and other things that are provided through that college. And then there's also a Department College of Education that has students going out into the schools throughout Flagstaff and providing teachers aids and getting their hours in order to get their certification from the state of Arizona. There's the College of Engineering and Informatics and Applied Sciences, which has the ability to help many students. I know the Flagstaff city has some of our traffic engineers teach classes in the civil engineering program, and then have that ability to give on the ground real life experience to students at the university. The College of the Environment, Forestry, and Natural Sciences is one of the oldest colleges on campus. NAU has always had a large focus on forestry and natural resources, and you'll see as we get into their research emphasis that still remains true. And then another big focus is social, behavioral, health, and human services, including biomedical research and student learning on campus. There's also a College of Business and the Honors College. Coconino Community College provides associate degrees and certificates, and they also serve for a transfer program. So students at Coconino Community College can finish their first 2 years of several different kinds of degrees at Coconino Community College and then transfer to ASU, U of A, NAU, or any other college in the state of Arizona. They also provide college credit as part of dual enrollment for high school students. The 3 top concentrations at Coconino Community College were general business, which is part of their emphasis on workforce support and workforce training. People can go and get certifications for software they need for work, for different kinds of filing and billing and things that really help support businesses throughout the Coconino County. Nursing is another important program, and it's got a high level of concentration, and that serves our community during the pandemic in particular. I think that contribution has been very much noted. Also comes, I'm going to ask everyone to make sure they're on mute, if that would be all right, since we heard somebody's phone ring. Where was I? Okay, liberal arts and sciences. Many of those students are getting those dual degree programs and getting that early credit so that they can transfer more easily to another institution of higher learning to complete a bachelor's. There's also workforce training for automotive repair, construction, fire science, and EMTs, which are all areas of essential services, as a term that we probably weren't using much before the COVID-19 pandemic, but are now, that allows people in Coconino County trained for jobs that have good pay, are in high demand, and are needed now. I'd like to just give a quick overview of the economic contribution of these 2 institutions. Both of these reviews of their economic contributions included an in-plan model, which is an input-output model that looks at the region as a whole. And then what it does is it looks at a dollar getting spent in the region and how many times that dollar gets recycled and reused to create economic activity before the last penny is spent somewhere else. Generally, the region is identified as Coconino County. And when we do the economics webinar next week, we'll talk more about economic activity impact analyses and how that plays out across the county. So Northern Arizona University estimated that they had $1.96 billion in economic activity. So remember, that's that dollar kind of rolling through the economy over and over again. They're the largest employer in Coconino County. They have 4,394 full-time faculty, 1,479 part-time faculty, and over 2,900 staff, including the graduate assistants who help conduct research on campus. They also had a return on investment calculation that's done in two different ways. One, if you put $1 of the state revenue into NAU, you basically get back $1.72 in taxes only returned to the state and local governments. So that's one way that you recoup the economic activity and investment in the university. And then the second is that for every $1 of state spending done through NAU, $24.20 of economic activity is produced in Coconino County. So those are two different ways of looking at that investment in terms of multipliers and how that impacts the economy overall. Coconino County, though a much smaller institution, you can see there's 21,000 enrolled students versus 3,800, still has a very sizable economic impact, totaling about $80 million according to the last impact study they have, including their direct operational costs, aid to students, including their financial aid that then gets spent to pay salaries, et cetera. And then also alumni and their increased earnings in the regional economy. There's 306 full-time, part-time faculty and staff at Coconino Community College. And for every $1, remember Coconino Community College is funded by a taxing district in Coconino County. For every $1 in taxes paid to that district, $2.50 of benefit is returned to the taxpayers in state and local taxes. NAU, being a research institution, has several areas of research. This is an examination that they did on their areas of research and how much grant, patent, contracts, and licensing is coming from that. The USDA, NASA, and Health and Human Services have all put substantial investments in the research going on NAU, which is reflected in the biomedical and biological area, natural resource science, and health. Also, we have a lot of astronomy, astrophysics associated with USGS and NASA in our area. And those are another two federal agencies that are funding research on campus. So that was a very fast review of more than 200 pages of reports that we read through just for you, so you guys don't have to. Just to give you a quick snapshot of how diverse and different the opportunities for education are in our community. This matters to the planning staff and the regional plan efforts for a couple of reasons. One, schools and neighborhoods and schools and economic opportunities are very tightly tied in terms of the broader research on those topics. And so we want to understand the nature and scale of them in our county so we can understand how it might affect our future planning efforts. Some of the things we are starting to do is in each of these snapshot papers where we couldn't do all the research we wanted to at this first staff. Remember, all these snapshots are drafts, and we'll produce several drafts of them throughout the next 2 years, is things we want to be curious about still. Part of our goal in this round of public engagement on the regional plan is to be curious and gain some understanding, not to solve every problem or have all the answers. And so we are still as staff very curious about understanding better how school grades, which we didn't present today because we didn't feel like we knew enough about them to be able to present them fairly, might be different, and what might be the factors and their differences between public and charter and private schools in our community. Talking about how charter schools may be impacting funding and performance of public schools. How do our land use decision impact school performance and educational equity in our community? We talk about the distribution of affordable housing in the community and how that might concentrate poverty or not. Also, we would like to know more about what national and state trends will impact NAU and CCC's growth and focus in the next 20 years. NAU and CCC being large employers and having a huge impact on our workforce, it's important we keep working together to get a shared understanding of what that may mean. And then we also want to talk, as we talk about land use planning, which we will talk about in a couple of weeks for the first time, and then throughout the regional plan process repeatedly, if you were around for the last bit of this kind of planning, is what are the future land uses out there? The Arizona Board of Regents owns many vacant properties throughout the region that are tied to campus, but don't really have a put to purpose yet. So we want to understand the implications those properties being developed over time. And so now I will leave this up for a second. I think that Jordan is going to put the open town hall link in the chat if you want to go ahead and fill out the evaluation for today's webinar. But if you have questions and you'd like to ask them while we're recording, we encourage you to go ahead and raise your hand. And you can do it by finding that little reactions button on your screen, and then we'll call on you, or you can type a question in the chat if you would rather approach it that way. So do we have any questions? I also should say Josh Mayer from NAU and Larry Hendricks from Coconino Community College are both here today if there are questions that are better addressed by those institutions. David Wessel's got his hand up. Can we unmute him? I'm going to stop sharing for a second.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. In terms of some of the context of the larger trends, do we know how enrollment is comparing to, the number of school-age children in the community?
At FUSD's level or at the higher education level?
At the FUSD level.
I think it may be difficult to tell at this time because the last 2 school years, there's been lots of shifts in enrollment. Often enrollment is taken at a certain point, like the first 100 days of enrollment for K through 12. And with the pandemic in the last few years, people have been switching schools to try and help meet their children's needs in a very different way. So if we were looking at 2018 data and 2021 data, I'm not sure if we would know how much of that percentage has left the formal school district and how many people are homeschooling yet. I think some of that's still out. We weren't able to pin it down well enough to provide an answer at this time. But it's another good question to be curious about.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly know that nationally the demographics are shifting so that school age populations and the population that's going into higher education is smaller than the previous cohort. I don't know if Larry or Josh want to talk a little bit about how that's going into planning for CCC and NAU. That's just a big national demographic shift.
Hi, this is Larry Hendricks. From the community college perspective, yeah, there is currently a downward trend in enrollments, and I'm not sure if that's going to persist. Bigger minds than mine contemplate issues like that, but there is currently a downward trend statewide and nationally in community college enrollments.
Yeah, in terms of four-year institutions, we're noticing sort of a national trend among universities in rural settings. One thing that your report doesn't show, Sarah, and I'm sure when you dive deeper, you can see it obviously. But over the last several years, enrollment at NAU has been fairly flat to slightly declining, even prior to the pandemic. We do think that there are certain segments of the population that we can do a better job about, attracting and communicating the value of a four-year degree, and we do aim to do that. But we do know that among rural universities, largely, the trend is downward to flat.
Thank you guys both for offering that. Are there other questions? I know we've got, if you want to raise your hand, that's fine. Also, if you want to type in the chat, that's great too. Nat, I can see you have your camera on. Did you want to ask a question?
That's always a mistake, Sarah.
We saw it.
No, I again, you're consolidating so much data is so important. And I sure hope these webinars get out to folks that may be not even interested in the regional plan. They're just so informative. The leadership program had an education day yesterday. This would have been a wonderful, wonderful PowerPoint. Was it yesterday? No, it was last Wednesday. I don't know when it was. It was within a week. But one of the things that doesn't show up in the numbers is particularly what CCC is all about. And it's all about responding to our county and its population directly. NEU provides that service for folks that want to go through a higher education path and up the ladder that direction. And CCC as its partner in that sense addresses really just the county. And in doing so, it's quite flexible. We're small, but we can change rapidly when the need is there. So I just wanted to make that point that there are the numbers and then there are the philosophy behind the schools.
Absolutely. I think a good example of that for CCC is, when you drive around town and you see the chain link fences up at construction sites lately, they all say they need plumbers and electricians. And one way we grow those things is through our community college. There's a construction program there. There's also a construction management program at NAU. And so that's a big workforce, is a big part of growth. If we're growing as a community, which we have been, and seeing construction jobs growing, it matters that we have a workforce. It lowers costs for construction when the workforce comes from here and they're not having to pay per diem to plumbers and electricians who come up from Maricopa County or the Verde Valley. We want to see if those folks live in our community and they can get their education here and get their certifications here, that cost starts to go down. So there's even a tie to affordable housing. So I know we have some other folks on the line. I know we're right at 12:30, so we could maybe take one more question, stop recording, and then I know Melissa and I can hang on the line for a few more minutes if there's anything else. Any last questions? Go ahead, Nat. I see your hand up. You are on mute though.
How does education and all aspects of it that you just talked about feed into the regional plan? And maybe I came in a little bit late, so maybe you said that in the beginning.
Well, Melissa talked a little about K12 and how childhood education fits into the regional plan. Schools can be the heart of a neighborhood, and they're really critical for families that we have good schools and that kids are getting the education they need. In terms of their impact on the regional plan overall, I mean, education is one of what's considered a primary sector, economic sector in Flagstaff. We basically manufacture education as a community. It's one of our exportable economic resources. So on top of all of the great culture and enrichment opportunities and professional growth opportunities, it's also one of our export industries. People throughout the state of Arizona come here to get their education, and then they build relationships with this community. We see that a lot when we hire for jobs at the city and county. People come back and want to work for our city and county because they loved it here, because it was part of a time in their life that NAU and CCC set them up for success, and it feels like they can give back to the community. I think that's a really common thing we hear in job interviews. Josh and Larry, would you want to add anything to that? We'll see who can unmute first.
I guess that would have been me. Yeah, especially that personal experience of getting an education up here in northern Arizona is completely valid, because I'm an example of it. I came here to go to school and I never left, and I felt like this was the community that I wanted to contribute to for the rest of my natural life. So I'm here, and I think that's a common story, and it's an important story.
And I think, those are all very critical pieces of the puzzle. But I think also, in looking at a couple of the questions that the city and county are looking to answer in terms of land use. I think that in looking at, the number of students that we have and the number of folks that we employ in the community, all are very, very relevant, even if, the education piece itself has a relevant piece. I think broadly, just the number of folks that we have that are directly tied to the institution at any given point in time are very, very relevant to the long-term regional plan.
Yeah, there's not a neighborhood in the Flagstaff region that doesn't have people commuting in and out of NAU and CCC every day. There is not a neighborhood where there are not students living. Every neighborhood in Flagstaff, every neighborhood in the region has both students, faculty, and staff as part of its makeup. And so really it's about the people connected to that. So I think that's a really good point, Josh, is that the land is part of that whole story as well. Well, thank you all for attending the snapshot today. I'll remind everyone that there's a link in the chat to our evaluation if you'd like to go and make some suggestions. I'm going to stop recording.